These strange faces, known as the Green Man, are hidden in churches all across Europe. But where does he come from? He's not a Christian figure. So why are these mysterious carvings decorating churches all across the continent? Well, the Green Man appears in many different forms, but is usually depicted as a face covered in foliage, in leaves, in branches, quite often spewing from his mouth. Historians generally interpret him as a symbol of rebirth, the cycle of life. But what if I told you his origin may be far more curious? What if those carvings, those symbols, were actually memories of a forgotten people now lost to time? Let me take you on the journey of how I uncovered the Green Man's secrets. Now, this story and my part in it starts further back than you might think. In fact, it starts back when I was a boy, and I used to love going out into the woods and playing in the trees, climbing trees, cutting through hordes of orcs, pretending I was Aragorn. And as I grew older, I kept that love of both trees and of fighting fantasies like Lord of the Rings. But I didn't really have anywhere to channel that adventurous spirit, nothing to put that love into. Well, that was until I discovered something a few years ago. Now, it all started when I stumbled across a video by Rick's Creations, which ended up changing my life. He introduced me to the concept of world building, which is really just designing your own world. The history, the characters, the lore, the setting, the location, all of those kind of things, the environment, magic. And it doesn't really have to be for anything world building. It can just be for fun, or you may want to write a story in it like me. It's just a great creative hobby. And yeah, I watched this video about world building and it really sparked something in me. And I thought, yeah, that's a bit of me. I want to make my own fantasy world, being a lover of Lord of the Rings and Tolkien. So why am I telling you all this? And how does it link to the Green Man? Well, it all comes down to a part of my world that I started to build. When I started to develop Taro, which is my fantasy world, I knew that I was going to need some fantastical races to go along with my fantasy world. But one of the first maps that I drew of Taro had a great big forest at its centre. And so naturally, along with my love of trees, I started to craft a forest folk type of fantasy race. Not too dissimilar from elves or dryads or fairies, but with my own unique spin on things. And so I ended up designing the Whittles. But what is a Whittle? Well, Whittles are children of the forest. They are humanoid, but distinctly planty. They have hands and feet that are much stronger and better for climbing than humans do. Quite similar to monkeys in that respect, so that they can climb trees where they live. Their hair also changes colour with the seasons. In spring, it's fresh and green. In autumn, it turns auburn and orange like the leaves on the trees. And in winter, some Whittles, their hair falls out like the leaves fall off a tree. And for others, they turn pale so that they camouflage into the forest. Their clothes are also very natural. They're made from hemp-like fibres woven together and adorned with leaves, branches, mosses, flowers, and other natural decor that help them to blend into their environment, but also are elements of fashion in themselves. Their appearance, you could say, is quite similar to the Green Man, although they embody the cycle of life rather than just representing it. But it wasn't only their appearance that the Green Man inspired. You see, in the little part of England that I'm from, there are a lot of churches around me with these Green Man carving. And not only that, but there are also some folklore tales of green children being seen in woods actually just a few miles from my house. This all got me thinking, What if the myths surrounding the Green Man were actually rooted in reality? What if our ancestors had carved these faces into the churches, knowing that the church buildings were going to be around for millennia, to perhaps warn us or perhaps remind us of these things that they had seen? So I began to weave the myths of the Green Man into my creation of the Whittles. I've always imagined that my world of Taro is inexplicably linked to our world, perhaps by some kind of magical bridge, a convergence of realms, much like Narnia in C.S. Lewis's works, like The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, where a portal connects the two together. But it puzzled me for a long while just how I was going to link them. And then when I started to research a bit on the Green Man and came across these sculptures hidden in churches all over, it struck me that perhaps they were the reminders, they were the links to our world. And perhaps long ago, when magic was still a thing in this world, that the Whittles had somehow found their way into our world, and our ancestors had chosen to remind us by carving their faces into churches. Well, now you know a bit about the Whittles and how they link to the Green Man, you may be wondering how they live. Whittles are, as you would guess from being forest folk, predominantly forest dwelling, at least in the earlier periods of their history. They would build nest-like structures up in the canopy of trees and live in those. And then as technology advanced and culture developed further, they learned how to hollow out the inside of trees and then started to build their homes inside the trunks. This, of course, developed over time. And before long, they were building cities. When I say building cities, I mean growing them, because Whittles have a love for the natural world, and they are masters at growing things. And so they learnt how to nurture trees and to grow them into pretty colossal towers, akin to skyscrapers in our world. They would grow these huge trees, often only in a generation or two, and begin to hollow them out and live inside them. In their period of history that I've spent most time developing, their technology is pretty similar to our Dark Ages, only all of their inventions are, of course, linked to nature and natural materials. Not that obviously iron isn't a natural material, but I mean like woods and resins and things like that. They're starting to transition at the point in my short story from armours such as gambeson of woven fabrics and chainmail made of like little resinous wooden rings to developing plate armours such as bits of bark that they've specifically bred the trees to become very strong, so they're sort of equivalent to like a steel armour plate. And I've really enjoyed that process of not straying too far from our world so that it's still realistic, but just putting my own spin on things as to how this race of forest folk might have evolved and might have developed their technologies over the years. Now, of course, no fantasy world really is complete without a magic system, and that's something that I'm going to get into in future videos. So if you don't want to miss out on that, hit the subscribe button down below. And if you want a bit of a teaser for it, you can click the video link there somewhere, and you'll get a bit of a feel for where I'm going with that one. So the Green Man, he isn't just a face carved in stone, he's a doorway. A reminder that behind every myth is the potential for a whole new world. And in this case, it's the Whittles of Taro. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. Drop a tree down in the comments below if you got this far and you enjoyed the video.
and I'll catch you next time. God bless.